Hello, my name is Professor Hudson, and you are about to view narrated PowerPoints from Module 9, which covers energy and enzymes. The topics to be covered in this narrated PowerPoint lecture include what is energy, how is energy transformed during chemical reactions, how is energy transported within cells, how do enzymes promote biochemical reactions, and how are enzymes regulated. Energy is the ability to do work. Work is a transfer of energy to an object which causes the object to move. There are two fundamental types of energy. Potential energy, which is energy that is stored, and oftentimes potential energy is in the form of chemical energy, such that, for example, the chemical energy in bonds, the electrical charge in a battery, the energy in the bonds of the bread or the sandwich you eat. Chemical energy is the energy that is contained in molecules and released by chemical reactions. Molecules that provide chemical energy include sugar, glycogen, and fat. Cells use specialized molecules such as ATP to accept and transfer energy from one chemical reaction to the next. The other fundamental type of energy is called kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of movement. For example, light, heat, electricity, and the movement of objects is often thought of as kinetic energy. Lastly, free energy is the amount of energy available to do work after a chemical reaction has occurred. This slide shows the difference between kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy is energy of motion, such as the girl swinging the bat to hit the ball, whereas potential energy is energy that has not been used yet, and it's often stored in the bonds of a molecule. Let us review. Here is review question 1. Remember, for the review questions contained in these narrated PowerPoint lectures, you do not have to input them into a quiz. These questions are strictly for your own use and review. Question 1. Which of the following is an example of potential energy? Is it a big piece of chocolate cake, someone running a marathon, a fish swimming upstream, or a leaf unfolding? Choose the correct answer. Oftentimes when we talk about energy transformations in the universe, there are two laws that come to mind. They are referred to as the first and second law of thermodynamics. The laws of thermodynamics describe the basic properties of energy. The laws describe the quantity and the quality of the energy. When we talk about the quantity, we talk about the total amount. When we talk about the quality, we're referring to the usefulness of energy. The first law of thermodynamics states, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can change form. The first law is often called the law of conservation of energy. The total amount of energy within a closed system remains constant unless energy is added or removed from the system. The amount of useful energy decreases when energy is converted from one form to another. Now, this is referred to as the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy is the tendency to move toward a loss of complexity and of useful energy, and toward an increase in randomness or disorder in less useful energy. So the first law of thermodynamics states energy can neither be created or destroyed, but it can change from one form to another. And then the second law states when energy changes from one form to another, there will always be a loss of useful energy. And this increases the amount of disorder in the universe. Useful energy tends to be stored in highly organized matter, and when energy is used in a closed system, such as the world we live in, there's an overall increase in entropy. So highly ordered means lots of energy and less entropy. More disorder means less energy and an increase in entropy. A common everyday example would be a room in your house. When the room in your house or your bedroom, for example, is highly ordered, there is a decrease in entropy and an increase in energy. If you think about it, in order for your room to be ordered and organized, you have to constantly put in energy. This decreases disorder and thus entropy. If you do not put energy into keeping your bedroom clean, then it will gradually move towards disorder, which is an increase in entropy. It really doesn't take any energy at all for the room to become disordered. Another example is with a car burning gasoline. When gasoline is burned, the orderly arrangement of the 8 carbons bound together in the gasoline molecule are converted into 8 randomly moving molecules of carbon dioxide. And I might add, when the car converts the gasoline into the energy of motion, it's converting potential energy of gasoline into the kinetic energy of motion. There's always some loss as heat. And so when you put gas in your car, quite a bit of it is not used to actually move the car. Maybe only 39 or 29% of the gasoline is actually going to power the car. The rest is wasted back into the environment. And according to the first and second law of thermodynamics, this is what typically happens with energy transformations. Energy transforms from one form to another, and there's always some released back into the environment as heat that cannot be used. Here's another review question. Which of the following is part of the first law of thermodynamics? Some energy is lost when it is transferred. The amount of energy in the universe is decreasing. The amount of energy in the universe is constant. And the amount of energy in the universe is increasing. Choose the best answer. Living things use the energy of sunlight to create the low entropy or the low disorder conditions of life. The highly organized low entropy systems of life do not violate the second law of thermodynamics because they are achieved through a continuous influx of usable light energy from the sun. In creating kinetic energy in the form of sunlight, the sun also produces vast entropy as heat. So in nature, there's a constant recycling of energy. For example, plants use the sunlight for energy, and then you have animals that eat the plants. Then you have other animals that eat the animals that eat the plants, and so on. And so there's a constant recycling and transformation of energy as it passes through the different organisms. But of course, according to the second law of thermodynamics, this transformation is not 100% efficient. So at every stage of the transformations, there is some loss back into the environment as heat. Now let's talk about how is energy transformed during chemical reactions. A chemical reaction is a process that forms or breaks the chemical bonds that hold atoms together. Chemical reactions convert one set of chemical substances, the reactants, into another set, the products. All chemical reactions either release energy or require a net input of energy. Exergonic reactions release energy. In this example, we have 2 reactants in yellow, which are converted into 2 products in blue, with a release of energy as the products are made. When energy is released during a chemical reaction, such that energy is considered part of the products, we say that this is an exergonic reaction. The opposite example would be what we call an endergonic reaction. Endergonic reactions require an input of energy. Here we have 2 reactants in blue in the presence of energy, converted it to two products in yellow. In this case, this is considered an endergonic reaction because the energy is considered part of the reactants, or the energy is used to make the reactants react with one another to make the products. This slide illustrates an exergonic process called cellular respiration, which we will talk about in a future chapter in more detail. Exergonic reactions release energy. Reactants contain more energy than the products in an exergonic reaction. An example of an exergonic reaction is the burning of glucose. As glucose is burned, the sugar combines with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water, releasing energy that can be used or harnessed by ATP. Because molecules of sugar contain more energy than the molecules of carbon dioxide and water, this reaction releases energy. Notice that in this case, there is energy along with the products, carbon dioxide and water. This would be an example of an exergonic reaction. So when you eat food and it's broken down into carbon dioxide and water with the release of energy for ATP, that is considered an exergonic process. This slide illustrates the endergonic process called photosynthesis. This process is the opposite of cellular respiration. Endergonic reactions require a net input of energy. All chemical reactions require an initial energy input called the activation energy to get them started. In this situation, we have energy as part of the reactants. So you need the energy to make the carbon dioxide and water react to produce the macromolecules, carbohydrates, and oxygen. This is considered an endergonic reaction. Let us review. Question 3. Reactions which require an input of energy are considered exergonic, endergonic, or will never occur. Choose the best answer. Now let's talk about how is energy transported within cells. Most organisms are powered by the breakdown of glucose. Energy in glucose cannot be used directly to fuel endergonic reactions. Energy released by glucose breakdown is first transferred to an energy carrier molecule. Energy carrier molecules are high energy, unstable molecules that are synthesized at the site of an exergonic reaction, capturing some of the released energy. ATP and electron carriers transport energy within cells. ATP is the most common energy carrying molecule you will see in cells. It is sometimes called the energy currency of the cell. Energy is released in cells during glucose breakdown and is used to combine the relatively low energy ADP and phosphate into ATP. Energy is stored in the high energy phosphate bonds of the ATP. The formation of ATP is an endergonic reaction, whereas the breakdown of ATP is considered an exergonic reaction. Oftentimes, the two can occur with other reactions, which we call coupling. ATP is not the only energy currency molecule in the cell. And there are also molecules such as NAD and FAD, which act as electron carriers for transporting high energy electrons, often leading to the formation of ATP. When we talk about energy coupling, we talk about how oftentimes what will happen is you'll have the breakdown of ATP, which is exergonic, coupled to some other reaction that requires energy and is endergonic. Here you have the breakdown of ATP used to fuel the muscle contraction needed for lifting the weights. This is a coupled reaction, which is when an endergonic reaction is coupled with an exergonic reaction. This slide also shows another view of that process. The release of energy from the exergonic breakdown of ATP is used for the muscle contraction, which is endergonic. We'll stop here before proceeding with the next segment of the lecture.